condos, dogs, and cops. That's what we're talking about with our good friend and paralegal, Bita Di Lisi, right after this. All right, my friends. Yes, here we are with our favorite paralegal in all of the land, Bita Di Lisi from Stonegate Legal Services. And I got to tell you, we've been sharing stories offline, some of which cannot be shared online, unfortunately, but tenants are awesome. That's all I got to say. Bita, how you doing?
I'm good, Gary. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, 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 excellent. So you've always come prepared with a story, and today there might be a few stories, but what do you got in store for us off the top?
Well, let's talk about the eviction. So we had an eviction last week, and the property was a condominium, and that condominium had a balcony. And this tenant who was being evicted had a big dog. And instead of walking this poor dog out to poo and pee, she would let him out on the balcony. And after a while, the dog started pooing all over the balcony. And after another while, when it would go to poop, it would step all over the original poop and bring that inside. So, as you can imagine, I hope you're going to share this picture, right?
Yeah, we got some show and tell here because
We
the
have some show and tell.
picture is 1,000 words, right? There you have it,
folks. That is not soil, you see. That is dog poop all over the balcony. The landlord actually had to attend with a bucket and a shovel to clean all of that poop. And if you can, I mean, it's hard to realize what that odor would have been, but that poor animal would have had to go outside, relieve himself, walk all over that, and bring that back inside. So if you can imagine how unhygienic that would be, in addition to how it would damage hardwood floors or laminate floors in the property.
Now, and there's a few pieces of it, because I remember reading your post on this as well last week on Instagram, and everybody should be following your Instagram feed for stories just like this. However, there is a few elements here. Not only do you have to go through like the LTB side of things, but there's also the condo board that raised concerns, right?
Yeah, the condo board raised concerns just because it's unhygienic, and balconies are actually considered common areas. So,
Really? Yeah.
and they
Yeah, of
have
course.
rules, right? As what you can put on your balcony, and obviously you can't have that on your balcony. But yeah, there were several notices to the landlord that this is unhygienic. Imagine living next door, right? You
Oh my
can see
gosh. Yeah.
you can see part of the partition on the balcony that there is somebody living next door.
Yeah. Yeah. This I've been privy enough to see some of the other pictures of the unit. And if you think like, just imagine what this is on the outside, you can only imagine what it looks like on the inside. Right.
Right.
And it's, yeah, tenants, we love our tenants, and some tenants more than others for obvious reasons, or less than others. Yeah. Nuts, nuts, nuts. There's a lot going on. I know when you first jumped on our call, Bita's like, oh, Gary, what a day. What a day.
And it's only 11 o'clock.
I know. So share with us, and I know we've had a similar story maybe a month ago or a little bit longer, but it's coming and coming in waves. Share with everyone what's going on this morning with your eviction.
Yeah, so we had another eviction, and this actually stemmed from a tenant agreeing to vacate. So an N11 was signed. It was filed with the landlord and tenant board, and the process is that when an N11 is signed, when an agreement to vacate is signed, is filed with the board. The board will issue what's called an ex parte order, which is just a fancy legal term for an eviction order without a hearing. So you're bypassing the amount of time it takes to get a hearing. And that order, once received, it can be enforced with the sheriff. Well, The sheriff went to evict. They posted the common practice is they post a notice of vacant possession. And this notice basically says that on such and such date, the sheriff will arrive to evict all tenants and all occupants, basically anyone residing in the rental property. Well, they arrived. The person on the order was only one person. There was only one tenant, but I guess there were women and children there. And they took it upon themselves, and I don't know where they got their legal opinion from, to not evict. And they told the landlord that, landlord, you need to go back to the landlord and tenant board and get an order that says that we are to evict all tenants and occupants. Now, perhaps they know the tenant. Perhaps they felt sorry for the tenant. Perhaps it was just to buy them more time. But they do not have the authority to make that call, right? The police should not get involved with giving a legal opinion at an eviction or after an eviction.
It's always a slippery slope, and I know, you know, the police are there, and I have friends that are police officers and investors as well, and they are there to obviously, you know, to keep the peace and things like that, right? And it certainly throws a wrench into this. And think about this as well, like, we're recording this on a Friday, so now nothing really is going to get done possibly until at the very earliest Monday.
At the very earliest, yeah. And I mean, Garrett, the sheriff come there, they do what they have to do, and then they leave. If there's a dispute, the landlord is told to call the police, and the police will arrive and remove them. And that's exactly what happened. But I guess this officer made a call. And of course, we can't reach the officer at the desk back at the police division, but they make the wrong call.
Yeah. Crazy. So let's transition a little bit. Like our evictions, you know, not every eviction is terrible and goes sideways and backwards and things like that. There are, you know, successful evictions and things, and of course you help out with that a lot. You told me an interesting story, because very rarely, and I think this might be the only time you've ever represented a tenant, and it only so because you had a personal relationship with that tenant as a friend, but the things you say matter. And what did the opposing side say that you just, oh my gosh.
So we had a hearing yesterday, and the tenant was a good friend of mine from back in the day. So I was helping her out. And the application we went to the board for is that the act does not apply because there was no tenancy. My client and her sister actually live next door to one another. And obviously there was a family quarrel, and the sister said, I want you out of my property and you're a tenant. So the sister tried to go through the board saying that my friend is a tenant and owes her $40,000. Meanwhile, we've reached out to her several times and her legal representative to provide a lease, which one does not exist, and more importantly, a rent receipt, right? Because if you're claiming that you're owed $40,000 and you're claiming that there was a tenancy, at one time there was monies exchanged. Well, here's why the legal representative that you hire makes a difference. At that hearing, that legal representative said that the reason why a receipt was not provided to the tenant's rep, which was myself, was because the landlord didn't want to disclose to the CRA. I mean, and then the adjudicator made a comment. She paused for a minute and she said, did I hear you correctly? You know I'm a government official? Did you just say that the reason why you did not want to disclose or provide a rent receipt is because you didn't want to provide information to the CRA? Now, keep in mind, this is all on the record.
That's right. I cannot imagine that paralegal being hired by that landlord in the future.
Oh my!
It's going to cost them a lot more than $40,000.
Yes, now it is, right? Because guess what my client's going to do now that there's a family quarrel? Guess who? Guess if the CRA is going to receive a copy of that order.
Yeah. What you say matters. I like how you said that. Yes. Absolutely. And who represents you
and who matters. Represents you matters. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not all doom and gloom. Let's kind of transition from, from the doom and gloom side and maybe the entertaining side for some at the very least. I've said this in the past. Sometimes you cannot buy entertainment like you can at the landlord tenant board hearings.
That's
It is
right.
something special. Okay, let's talk about how to perhaps protect your unit, how to qualify your tenants in a sense. And I know there's been lots of conversation, especially some units going to multiple offers for tenants and things like that. And one of the hot topics at the moment is prepaid rent or rent in advance, 6 months, 12 months in advance. Talk to us about the pros and cons of that, perhaps.
So let's talk about that. And the only pro is that the landlord gets paid up front. Now, and the reason why I say that's the only pro is because the tenant has 12 months from the date that the tenancy commences to bring an application through the board. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So we had a client who's the landlord who purchased a property, and they assumed the tenants. They signed a new lease with the tenants, and they agreed on $350 more a month. Okay. On day 365, okay, on the exact day, 365th day of the year, the tenant filed an application with the board requesting a refund for the illegal deposits. So even though these monies were paid for 12 consecutive months, because the application was filed within the 365-day period, the board will hold a hearing to hear this matter. So even if now what I'm finding is that tenants are agreeing to prepaid rent voluntarily, and that's because they want to secure the property
Yeah.
because nobody else will rent to them. Everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So they'll just give it up, and then the day after or within the 12-month period, they'll bring an application for a refund.
Wow.
So
I,
you have
I,
to really, really be careful.
and the goal for the tenant is to get the 9-10 months back in rent. Is that the goal for the tenant? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're really, the tenant is allowed to pay by any method as long as it's a monthly payment,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you,
And that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. And that's probably, that's not every situation or every tenant is gonna do that in a sense, right? That's an educated tenant that wants to claw back some money, if you will, right?
yeah,
But
that
we're
should raise
talking,
an eyebrow.
yeah, we're talking, that's not, if rent is, do the math, $2,000, $3,000 a month, and you ask for 10 months or more back, most landlords don't have that sitting in cash for that
Right,
specific situation, right?
right.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So you have to really be careful. That's why vetting the tenants from the beginning, vetting the prospects, is so important. Utilize the tools to vet prospects.
Right. Right. And we do promise we're going to talk about that in one of our calls where we lay out the different tools and in different strategies and things like that. Now, maybe this is going to take us back down to that slippery slope again, but I'm curious of what the legal perspective is from, let's say I have a unit for sale, home, condo unit, doesn't matter, with tenants involved, and I am getting interference from the tenants from the sale or during the sale of the property. What can I do to mitigate that? How do I work around that? What do I got to do, Bita?
Well, cash for keys is always the best approach, right? And that's because, you're paying the tenant for a buyout. You're buying out the tenancy. And that way you're eliminating a lot of future headaches. Access to the property, photos and videos, and more importantly, showings and closing.
Yeah.
Right. And we find that not a lot of tenants are interfering now, as they were during COVID, like 99.9% of tenants, they were saying nobody's coming in. right? And Gare, the ones that were saying that you can come in, you got to wear a hazmat suit,
Yeah.
a mask, gloves, like, you know how crazy it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now the tenants are more educated. So if they see that the sign is going up and they know how hot the market is, they want a piece of that pie. So you'll have tenants um, putting forward cash for keys proposals.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a lot of that. The tenants are starting that process. Whereas, going back 2 or 3 months ago, it was the landlord that was starting that process.
Interesting. So
Right?
words out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
We
okay.
had we had a tenant just put an offer in for $72,000. It makes no sense where they came up with that amount, but
Wow.
that's what they want.
Yeah. And on the flip side, if I've had conversations like this in the past, like in the past couple of months, in
Yeah.
fact, weeks, where a property has come up for sale, sold, and the tenant is, been there for many, many years and is below the average rent payment, and meaning that their payment is below the average is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. And they know if they got to move, they've got to, increase their payment by
Yeah.
maybe $1,000, $1,500, which is a lot more money. So there are, obviously things coming into play by the government to create more affordable housing, but it's not going to come fast enough. It's interesting. I always like hearing your stories because it's real life, real drama. In
Yeah,
some
no
cases,
kidding.
you know, it's enlightening, and not when Ben and I highlight, obviously the tougher stories to swallow if you're a landlord, but that's the reality of it. That's the what's the word I'm trying to say? I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say. That's what we take on as landlords, right?
Yeah.
You never know where that's going to end up, but that's why it's incredibly important to, as you said, to go through and have and choose the right tenants and do everything you possibly can to mitigate what
Yeah.
potentially could be the worst, right?
That's right. Even when you try to, properly vet prospective tenants, things go wrong. Imagine you don't. Like for example, my father-in-law, he never vetted anyone 50 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And he got lucky. But there are some people who vet the tenants, like they put them under a microscope, and then the day after they have a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I can think of two of my properties, both single family homes. Tenants have been in there. We're probably pushing 10 years now.
Yeah.
Right. So there are great tenants out there. There are great
Yeah,
tenants
there
out
are.
there, and they are our best partner and favorite partner alongside with the bank, that type of thing. So, but always a pleasure. Remind us how to get a hold of you.
Definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Stonegate Legal Services. Check out our Facebook, check out our website, stonegatelegalservices.ca. Lots of great stuff. And you can even book a free discovery call with our team.
There you have it, my friend. So that's Bita Di Lisi. I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody in the next video. Bye for now.
Bye for now.